So good to
Hi.
see you again. Yay.
Good to see you.
Awesome. Last time we talked to you, we were discussing the amazing pieces that you made for the Tiny Bricks collection.
That's right. I think it might have been about a year ago. It's quite a while ago now.
What a crazy year.
I know. Nobody has any sense of time anymore. It's completely messed up.
We are all completely blown away by your new collection. I don't know if it's like a work in progress figuring out a title, but the honoring monumental women artists, they're completely incredible. They're even more amazing in person.
Thank you.
They are, yeah, very, very gorgeous. Yeah, so do you see this recent collection as an extension of the pieces that you made for Tiny Bricks?
In some way, everything I do is sort of connected, but I've done textile related things for my whole career, really my whole life, starting way back in the 60s when I learned how to do batik. But I always sewed a little bit. That was never my main focus, but since right before the lockdown, I started getting involved with sewing, and that was before Tiny Pricks. That was a project with an artist named Liza Liu, a bead artist. She started a project on Instagram called the Comfort Blanket Project. And it was a textile related project. It was another group project. Anybody who wanted to participate could. And I found out about it because it was written up in the New York Times. She had started this project. And the idea was that you would create some kind of a blanket. So I decided to do more of a patchwork blanket, and I did panels about the size of these pieces, just sort of reflecting the pandemic, well, the lockdown in a way, just reflecting things that I did or I saw or I read. I would do a little illustration in embroidery. And then after that project was done, I made a whole blanket out of it. That's when I went to Tiny Pricks. I had already known about the Tiny Pricks project, but then I got very much involved and started doing illustrated quotes for Tiny Pricks.
How many pieces did you make with them?
I think I did 60 pieces for them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did it really up until Biden was elected. And then I said, well, I'm ready to do something that's not quite as depressing as Trump's quotes. So then I got involved with another group project called the Violet Protest, which was a more kind of uplifting idea of bringing people together. And it was something that's supposedly going to be given these squares, also little panels. Everything sort of had the same idea of doing these separate panels, and they were big group projects. And for the Violet Protest, everything had to be in either red or combinations of color red and blue, representing the red states and the blue states, and the idea of trying to find unity somehow. And so the idea is that this huge amount of these squares, which were displayed at the art museum in Phoenix, Arizona, where the organizer of this project is based, they're going to send these to Congress and give each congressperson and senator several of these squares.
What a
hoping
gift!
to inspire them to be nice to each other. Something told me to need more than that.
Some art bribery.
Anyway, it was a very nice concept, and it was a beautiful installation at the museum. If you look it up, you can probably see pictures of it, Violet Protest. Anyway, so I finished that one and I thought, okay, I'm going to do something for me, because everything I was doing before, I had to send the pieces off. I didn't keep any of the Tiny Pricks. And I didn't keep any of the Violet Protest pieces. So I thought, I'm going to do something that's all mine. So that's how this came about. And I was just sort of, searching around, and I got this idea to do this piece with Laurie Anderson and Frida Kahlo, because I found that there were some parallels in their lives. They both had these really traumatic, horrible accidents that caused them to be stuck in the hospital for months and months in traction. And I don't know that had any effect on their creativity, but each one of them is so completely, well, Frida Kahlo was, Laurie Anderson still one of my idols, they're both incredibly original artists. Nobody had done anything like them. So I thought, okay, the Latin phrase for it, one of a kind, is sui generis. So I decided to combine their faces and elements of their art because Laurie Anderson's a musician. She's a sculptor too, but she's a musician and plays the violin. So anyway, that came about. And then after that, I thought, I want to do more women artists because I love learning about women artists. I've read so many articles about them. And there's certainly right now very, very big emphasis on trying to get more women's art in museums. And there are these activist groups like the Art Girls Rising, and of course the Guerrilla Girls from way back, trying to bring people's consciousness to the fact that women have been neglected in museums. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I started thinking, well, I'm going to just pick artists that I love and that come into my mind, or that I've just learned about, that I've really fallen in love with, and learn about them and do something, find quotes by them, anyway, etc.
No, I love that your thinking didn't just go, I will make this one piece, but it immediately went to like making panels, envisioning a collection. Yeah, I mean, you're prolific. Like all like the
I have a lot of time on my hands.
No, but it's like we're creative also, but it's like the amount of incredible detail that you create. I mean, how long did it take you to make these? Like,
it depends on how much stitching there is in each piece, but they could take between 1 and 2 weeks each. I don't do it all day long. I'm doing other things too, of course, but because, and also my hands start getting tired, so I can't sew at a time. But yeah, they're very time consuming, but I love doing it. For me, it's very relaxing, and I don't know, I love it. So, and I listen to podcasts while I'm doing it, so I'm being entertained too.
And then what was the podcast that was one of the inspirations for the collection?
Yeah, the first one was listening to Laurie Anderson being interviewed and talking about her childhood and this terrible accident that happened. So that's what she had.
What was the podcast called?
It was a PBS, I think it was or NPR. It was an NPR interview with her, I believe, but she's talked about this in other interviews. I know that. But you can find it if you just look on in the podcast, search.
Amazing.
So, but that's what got me. Sorry.
That Darian is focusing on now,
the Nikki DeSanto. Yeah.
So you had seen her pieces in person. I would love to hear more about that.
Yes, I've seen a lot of her work in person, but the most exciting for me was going to her sculpture garden called the Tarot Garden, the Giardino dei Tarocchi, which is in Tuscany, and it's an absolutely fantastic place. It's open to the public, obviously. It's a big park, and you wander around and you turn a corner, you go behind a tree or something, and then there's this fabulous sculpture that represents one of the tarot cards, and everything is, Nikki DeSanto was very influenced by Gaudi, the Spanish artist and architect, and so he was famous for putting tile kind of mosaics all over everything. And so a lot of her pieces these huge sculptures are covered in either pieces of glass or colored tiles. And they're just brilliant, and they reflect the sun. They're just beautiful. So this is a copy of one of the pieces that's in the park called The World. And so that's what I used as my illustration. And then of course I didn't use tiles. I used sequins and beads and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how that came about. But it was going through that park was like a dream come true. It was so fantastic. But I've seen other pieces of her work in Paris. There's the Pompidou Center has a fountain that has her pieces in it. She was married to a kinetic artist named Jean Tanguy, and he's got these pieces that move. They're like bicycle wheels and the things turning around in the fountain. And anyway, it's fantastic. So if you ever go to Paris and the Pompidou Center, you can see some of her work. But her work's all over the world. It's in a lot. There's a big park in San Diego that she designed, and yeah. I think it's like, and children love these sculptures because they can play on them. And so, yeah, that's the story of Nikki DeSanto. Crazy about her. Hello? I think we lost your sound.
Hear it?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Now I can hear you.
Oh.
Yeah.
You were saying that the Yayoi Kusama was one of your favorite pieces. Is that right?
Yes, yes. She's another one who I've seen her work over the years, but I found out about her when I was actually writing a book about a collector who endowed a museum in Norfolk, Virginia, where I lived for a long time. And Walter Chrysler Jr., he had a museum in Provincetown,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, for in the 60s. And so she was invited to come up and do a happening. In those days we had happenings.
Yeah.
And she was doing polka dots her whole career. She's still alive. She's in her, I think she must be in her 90s now. But so she was painting polka dots on everything. So that was always her theme. And so at this happening, she would tell people that if they took their clothes off. First time I ever heard of her, but since then I've seen her work. I am.
Sorry,
Now I am.
the juicy part of the story cut out. Can you repeat what the happening was?
Oh yes, the happening at the Providence Chrysler Museum of Art was Yayoi Kusama came, and she told people if they would take off their clothes, she would paint their bodies with polka dots, and that was the happening.
Oh wow.
But you know, so much of her work had polka dots on it, so that quote is about the polka dots. And then instead of painting polka dots or embroidering polka dots, I have lots of buttons in my possession, including a lot of other, you know, various notions and things. So I thought, well,
no, I love it, and I love how you did her hair. No, I mean the
yeah,
pieces
that was
they're
that was
gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And then what Betty Starr was your other favorite piece? Is that right? Betty Starr?
Yes, Betty Starr. Betty Starr, yes. She's also so wonderful. And I love the fact that she does that. Her work is very topical and, you know, full of messages. But yeah, I really like this one. I like the way she came out, but it was fun trying to reproduce an assemblage, which I saw in person at a show at MoMA. They had a wonderful show of her work.
The skeleton alone, Peggy. You're such a genius. It's so good.
I know.
They're so special. It must be hard to part with them. I'm so happy that I share them with people too, like letting people experience them in person.
Oh no, that's I mean, that's what anybody who creates things wants to share it and wants input, wants to be able to, you know, reach people with it. So no, that was important. But in real life, it's a real window that
I love too that like with each of your pieces, you get your incredible artwork, embroidery, you get a profound, thoughtful quote from the artist, and then we get your write-up, your synopsis of each artist and how they resonate with you. I think it's a real treat. And your writing is also really impressive. I didn't know that you had 30 years of experience as a freelance writer and working with a magazine, right?
I worked in a newspaper for 22 years. I lived in Virginia for 30 years. I worked in a newspaper for 22 years, and I actually wasn't hired as a writer. I was hired as a librarian. I'm a librarian, as a newspaper. But I started doing freelance writing for them, and then I ended up doing work for a magazine, and yeah. So and then I wrote a book. I wrote a little book for the museum, for the Chrysler Museum, published by the University of Virginia. But yeah, so writing is part of my life too, and I still write.
It's quite a legacy. That's amazing. My favorite piece is the Hilma af Klint piece.
Yeah,
I would love to hear more about this.
Yeah, that was actually inspired. Well, that was actually inspired by a documentary I saw about her. So impressed by her.
Oh, you're cutting out.
Her story, and she believed it came from the spirit world. She had never been an abstract artist. There was no such thing as abstract art when she started painting, and she joined a spiritualist movement, which was very trendy at the time. Everybody was joining these Theosophist society and the kind of thing, and she was in a seance, and she felt that she was being guided to make these the drawings that eventually led to these hundreds and hundreds of paintings that she made. And so I just thought she was a very, very interesting character, Swedish artist
Absolutely.
who, yeah, just her story is great. And if you have a chance to see this documentary, it's terrific.
I saw her show at the Guggenheim in New York a few years back, and it completely blew my mind. Like, people had been talking about it, posting about it on Instagram, and my expectations were set really high. But seeing the pieces, like the immense scale of the pieces in person, it blew. I mean, it's had like a forever effect on me and what I want to create. And yeah, and I love how you juxtaposed Hilma, like looking very much like of her time next to her pieces, which were like full color, blooming, gigantic, immense work. Yeah, seeing pictures of the person, seeing pictures of Helma who created the pieces, it just makes it even that much more impressive, you know, that like the life that she lived, that she wasn't given any acknowledgement until, you know, after passing, right? Yeah.
I think she did. I think there might have been one exhibit of her work, but that's about it. Yeah, she also did not want to separate her paintings. She felt they had to be shown together.
Right.
So that kind of limited the amount of times that she could. I mean, the ability to show her work or to be in galleries. She just did not want. She kept everything pretty much to herself. Yeah, she was a very, very interesting person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also really happy to learn about some artists that I didn't know previously. Like, I'd never heard of Swoon, and learning about her through you, I'm thrilled about, and her doing work, honoring other working artists, like More Farrell Then. She's another artist who I know through I don't know her personally, but I know her work through Providence. Yeah, I mean, it's really, yeah, I love her work. And her, Swoon had a quote, street art, healthy practice of a healthy city, which I really liked. I thought that was really cool. Like, Providence, where Craftland is based, has murals everywhere, as you know, as does New York. And yeah, it seemed like a really cool commentary point of like a working muralist and working artist.
Okay, you're fading out now a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying that Swoon commenting about street art being a healthy practice for a healthy city, I thought was really thought-provoking, really interesting, and that we're lucky enough that Craftland is based in Providence, and Providence is, you know, the arts capital of the country and all about, you know, supporting artists. And yeah, that it's, I've never seen her work in person, but I've researching it after learning about her through you. She made a piece about an artist called More Farrell Then, who does really cool work that interprets the female body and sexuality and like primal desires, and maybe not desires, but like, yeah, she does work that I really, really like a lot. And then
what impresses me about Swoon is the work she's done to help other people, not artists particularly, but to help people in need. She went to Haiti and helped build after the hurricane a few years ago, helped build these kind of temporary housing. And I mean, she's done something she's working on a project for Pittsburgh for the local communities there. So she's also a tremendous humanitarian. I really, really admire her as a person. So, but her artwork is gorgeous, I think.
Yeah, and just like the scale of it too, the scale and the detail.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So, the installations are spectacular.
Yeah. And then I had also never heard of Shahiz Sikander, and everything that I could see online was amazing. I saw on Instagram that you had seen one of her recent shows. I'd love to hear about that.
Yes. Oh, she had a fabulous show at the Morgan Library in New York. I've known about her for years and years, but kind of lost sight of her in a way until this exhibit came up and it started being promoted. And I had never seen her. Well, I had seen her work in person years and years ago in the 90s, but was able to get to that Morgan Library show, which was gorgeous, really beautiful. To see these miniatures, to be able to get right up to these pieces, because she started her career painting her versions of these South Asian miniatures, like manuscript miniature paintings, using sometimes one hair and a brush, that kind of thing, just delicate work. But she would use the traditional technique, and she would use a lot of the traditional imagery, but then she would add either autobiographical or modern parts in it. Like she would add images in it that would make them very much hers. Now she's doing much bigger pieces. She's doing room size installations. She's doing sculptures, but her work is she's so intellectual in her work, and her work is so fascinating just to hear her discuss it. So anyway, I became a big fan.
See the artist's work in person and then honor them in your work, and interpreting their work into yours. I love it.
Oh, thanks. That's the way to.
So how did you know that the collection was finished?
I you know what, I could have gone on and on and on. There are so many artists I didn't add that I could have, and I should have in a way, but I just got tired of doing them, to be honest with you. I mean, I was going to do Georgia O'Keeffe. I was going to have Helen Frankenthaler. I was going to do Leonora Carrington. I had so many other artists in mind, but I just wanted to move on. So I decided that would be 20 pieces would be the series. And I might come back to it someday, but I just was ready for something different.
They're completely I'm blown away by all of the textiles, all of the beading, all of the detail. Can you share with us more about how you collected or sourced the materials and the yarn? It just the detail that you put in is completely amazing. Yeah, and I would love to hear more about how you narrowed it down. Yeah, how you source materials and found just the right pieces for the work.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always use the same cloth for the base of the piece. It's unbleached muslin that you can buy by the yard. There's nothing, very exciting about that. But I've just always done beading. I've always collected stuff. So I've got lots and lots of kinds of embroidery thread, and I've got beads, and I've got buttons. And I've always collected notions. And every time I go to a yard sale or an estate sale or something, I would buy stuff if I saw somebody had left that kind of stuff. And then like even costume jewelry, like that little brooch on Gwen John's neck. I just happen to have that. I just have tons of stuff. I don't know how to put it any other way. I have a big collection of stuff. And then, of course, I buy more when I need it. I buy more embroidery thread, and I find out about more stuff. And I keep learning. I'm constantly learning more about embroidery. So I'm taking lots of little free tutorials on YouTube, learning new stitches and new techniques, and then putting them to use.
I especially love the detail of Gwen John's dress.
Thanks.
I love it. And
yes,
the
stitch I learned how to do those little what do they call it? Trellis stitch, and those are black. Yeah, but you can learn how to do that. I mean, on YouTube, you can learn anything on YouTube. You know that.
Okay, so you can learn on YouTube, but the level that you achieved with them is like really, really spectacular. Yeah. You're humble, and I appreciate that, but the work is amazing. It needs to be appreciated in person. I'm, thrilled that that you're putting these out into the world for people to own too. I feel like that's just a gift. Like, we're thrilled to share them with our customers, and to help represent you and the incredible work that you're making.
I really appreciate what you guys have done and the way you frame them, and that's really wonderful, and I thank you so much for that. So.
I also Louise, is it pronounced bourgeois? Bourgeois. Bourgeois. She said the act of sewing is a process of emotional repair, which I thought was like, really, really spot on. And I wonder,
Yes.
what you thought about that.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's there's something
Oh, you're cutting out.
meditative that you have to focus on what you're doing. So if you have, oh no, am I back?
Yep.
You're back.
Yep.
Yes.
Anyway, I was saying there was something very meditative about the process, that if you're worrying about something, if something's on your mind, you have to focus on what you're doing to a certain extent when you're sewing. And the fact that you do something and you come to it, you finish it, you have a sense of achievement, accomplishment, you have a product when you finish that you can touch, or that you can even wear. I mean, with fabric, there's something very, very satisfying about that whole medium, I think.
No,
So I understand what she was saying when she, with that quote.
absolutely. No, and I think that they're works of art honoring the artist, and I don't know, showing like your broad range of techniques, and I don't know, putting all these new skills that you're learning into each piece. Yeah, they're amazing. I'm so happy to see you again and to be able to interview you and hear your thoughts on the pieces. This has been really great.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure as always, as before, and especially now. So thank you very much.
My favorite thing is the jewelry on all the artists. And not
Yes,
because
I
I'm
love
a jeweler, but
their
just
earrings.
because I think the detail is just so marvelous that every one of them has, their own personal jewelry. I just think it's so, it's just just fascinating detail. And I just think it's so wonderful that like you took.
Oh, thanks. Well, to me, that's always the most fun. That's the last thing I do is I attach the jewels. I always hope that the artist was wearing some kind of jewelry so I can find something to replicate it.
Like even like just like the little earrings and the little necklaces. I just think they're just perfect.
No, but it's like keeping all of the embroidery details, all of the jewelry where they don't compete, they just like enhance each other. Yeah. I love her stars. Yeah, they're really, really special pieces.
Thank you.
And all
you.
the painting, yeah.
Yeah, Kiki Smith's another fantastic, really, really interesting artist.
Yeah.
She's someone people should look into. Because her work is so varied and also very, it has a lot of meaning. It's very feminist, but it's also about the world and about, it's very personal and very sexual, but I love her. I love her.
A lot of her techniques remind me of your work, like the layering. Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the first things that I thought when I saw you a year ago. Truly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, thanks. That is you can't give me a better compliment than that.
And I truly mean it. Yay.
Yeah, no, and I love that I didn't know most of these artists, and then, having to look them up because you chose them. So then I figured it was something that I needed to, look them up because of that, and then learn about them.
That's
to me, that's so gratifying. That makes me feel great too, because I love sharing what I know. And some of them I just learned about myself. I mean, I've been a long time fan of Kiki Smith, but for example, Hilma af Klint, I really did not, I'd seen the images of her work, but I didn't really know who she was. And I only recently just feel like I discovered her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and sorry, that's it too, that it's like in a world of Instagram and the World Wide Web, like discovering something and making it your own, and then just you introducing us to new artists. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And yeah.
Thank you. That's also very gratifying. It makes me feel good.
Yay.
Yeah.
I love can we finish with the look on Louise Bourgeois' face? It's so good.
She was a pistol. She really, she was this little tiny woman, and nobody messed with her.
No, look at that face. You can't mess with her.
Yeah. Yeah, she was very, very specific about what she was doing and never veered from her course, I would say.
And her work is badass. Like just like the scale
It's
of
badass.
the,
Yeah.
like I've never, you know, seen one of her pieces. I would love to.
Oh yeah, those spiders are really awesome. They're so enormous.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I love the jewelry on this one and the
absolutely.
Oh,
headpiece
Faith Ring,
and the
she's
hair.
great.
And the
Yeah,
skeleton.
Yeah, that one's amazing.
yeah, I saw her quilts in at the Chrysler Museum. In fact, when I was still living in Norfolk, was my introduction to her work.
Yeah, and I love the quotes that you picked out for each piece too, because it's like it's not the quotes that the artists are known for necessarily either, and which I really like.
Oh, good, thank you.
I am not what I look like. I am my work. Yeah, I feel like that's like very much like an artist's point of view. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. This was a treat. We look forward to seeing you soon, talking to you soon about the
Oh,
next class.
thank you. Yeah, it's
Yay.
been a treat for me too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy. Bye.